Today on the Rise of the Challenge podcast.
Because there's this thing, I think it's called mother's guilt, right? And I know that fathers have it and everything else, but it is an inherently maternal thing that we have. And I think still now the social structures of the social norms is that women are the ones that are the nurturers, which we are, and they're the ones that are the mums and the wives and provide that home, and then the father supports it. I think the biggest challenge is probably learning to trust who actually has your best interests at heart in your network or your friendship circle.
Welcome to the Rise of the Challenge podcast. Joining us today, she's an entrepreneur. It's Tanya Abbey. How are you doing today, Tanya?
Good, thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
We're so excited to have you on the show to talk about your rise to the challenge. What we like to do with all of our guests is go right to the beginning. Talk about where you're from and what you like doing growing up.
So I'm on the Gold Coast today. So I'm from a country town called Mackay. So my dad was in the RAF. So we moved pretty much every 2 years. I was born there, but moved around to Australia. What I liked doing, reading. I still read a lot, so I like doing that. Australia is I don't know if you've been here yet, Alex, but it's a very wonderful place. So beaches and fishing and a lot of different outdoor activities. Very different, I think, now to when people are on their phones at that age. So yeah.
Australia is one of those bucket list items that I plan on going to.
Yeah.
You talked about moving around every few years, especially for kids growing up. Some kids or some individuals can relate because they were either army families or their parents got new jobs and they were always moving around. What was challenging about that, moving around?
I think it would be making friends. I think that's the biggest challenge, because what was I? I think I was 6 weeks old when we first moved. Obviously, I wasn't in a position to make friends then. But I think certainly changing schools, so having to make friends quickly, and finding out the social dynamics, right, of each different group too, which is not dissimilar now to being an adult as well. So that was probably one of the biggest challenges.
The only time I could relate was moving once, and I was in second grade. I always get the years wrong. I'm thinking probably 6, 7, 8. I don't even know. But
7, yeah.
Usually at that time, you're not at that stage where you're making friends that are going to be like the high school friends or the university friends. And so getting that change in dynamics, it was so hard. And you then kind of start growing up with them, where in your case, you're moving around so much. So you build that friendship and then it's like, oh, I'm leaving. And you may never see those people again. Was there any friendships that kind of lasted even if you moved away from them?
No, and I think now, like, I'm not that much older, but I'm 38. So I think now my children, they're 8 and 5, so it's very easy to connect with the mums and stay in contact as they go from preschool to school. I think people are a bit more active on social media, particularly from age 15 or even earlier. So there wasn't an opportunity, or and the stints were about 2 years, so there wasn't an opportunity to really connect with them, whereas now you can connect very easily either through the parents or, if you're old enough, through social. So interesting times.
Growing up, did you have anyone that was a huge inspiration for you? Someone that played a big role as a role model or someone that motivated you?
And it's funny, we get asked this a lot. I think as entrepreneurs, or anyone that's kind of progressed in their career. I'm first generation Australian, so my dad is English Irish and my mum is Filipino Spanish. So I guess the early foundation was built by my parents. My brother, he's a clinical psychologist, he's older than me. So certainly those three were my main kind of go-tos in terms of building foundation around social structures, and also how to work too, which is a really important thing. I think as I go through like entrepreneurial journey, or mine now, there's a collective of people. So I prefer to, I really like hearing people's stories. So I work with a lot of businesses in Australia, and I like to hear their stories, very similar to what you're trying to convey through your podcast. So there's probably a collective of people, but I did say to someone last week, my biggest inspirations are my children. They children are wonderful because it's not a there's no hesitation around doing something. If they want to learn how to do something, they just continue practicing until they've got it. Simple things like walking or crawling. At the moment, my boys are heavily involved in handball competitions in school. So, and they're my driver, really, my motivator. So I think I have wonderful people in my network. And I probably take something from all of them around, what inspires me or what pushes me or what makes me better. And I think that's important.
Do you see similarities with your kids and the dynamic that they have with each other to compare to you and your brother? Do you kind of
Yeah.
see that there's a lot of comparison or differences?
Yeah, my eldest is very much like my brother. And the eldest child is always, that perfect child that has to set the tone. They have to be the example for the younger one. And my youngest one, he's very much, he feels everything. So he's a really happy child, but if he's, cranky, he'll let you know, and then he gets over it really quickly. So very interesting. We were actually with my parents on the weekend and we were talking about the dynamic. So yes, can definitely see that with them and my brother and I.
One of those fun questions we're asked growing up is what is that dream job? That job that we always are wanting to pursue. For you, what was that dream job that you were always wanting to have?
It was probably a bit whimsical, like because I like reading, so I always wanted to either go down the path of, art or be a philosopher or something like that. I think now we have modern day philosophers that, maybe are on Instagram or are professors and things like that. But I think the main thing for me was really wanting to do something that I could enjoy every day, but just be around people and really connect with them and kind of ease their pain, I guess, whether that's through a conversation or helping them with something. So
With having those dream jobs, did you kind of pursue that with university, with getting the education in those fields, or did you find a different path that you went down?
well, with art, like I still paint and sketch, and now that my kids are older, I have a bit more time, so I still do that on the side. With philosophy, really, I just read a lot of books, and I did study a little bit of it in school, but I think probably more so philosophy, it's applying that in your everyday life. Being a business owner, you have to between obviously being really empathetic, but also being quite stoic too when you kind of reach challenges or you're trying to overcome them. But really, one of my really good friends, he was saying, you can study in a very fixed capacity in university or something, or you can be a lifelong learner. And that was a really nice thing because you can kind of go with the ebbs and flows of your interests. I think I've recruited for 17 years now, and I think we were brought up to have that one career and have that really fixed job or path that you want to go down. I think now more so than ever, you can kind of follow, loosely your path, but add things to it that, make your career something really special.
And I love how you mentioned about the side things that you do, like the painting and stuff and
Mm,
reading. I think it's so important that people don't so focus down on their career. And unless it's one of those things where that career is fun and passionate for them, that it doesn't feel like a job. But if you're in a situation where you're in a job, find other things that when you're off the clock or after hours that you enjoy doing. Like I have a full-time job, but I do the podcast because I enjoy wanting a challenge and I want to do something else and I get to meet amazing people. But to me, it doesn't feel like a job. And
yeah.
what you're saying that you found those things that you enjoy doing and you don't feel burnout when you're doing them because it's
Yeah.
relaxing, it's therapeutic for you.
Yeah. And I think too, and it's hard, I think, for people to align to their purpose and their job really. For me, someone said to me the other day, because I mentor for government here, and they were like, oh, working 10 hours as a business owner is really unhealthy. I actually don't feel like I work because I love what I do, right?
Yep.
But it is also important to take the time out. I think kids force you to take the time out, like having them because you want to be present for them. But I think too, a lot of clients I talk to that have kids or have a business, they go through this identity crisis, right? Where that's pretty much, they're, Alex, the business owner, or Tan, the business owner, or the mum, or whatever it may be. So these extra things, I enjoy cooking, and it's the time where you can just kind of be yourself. I think your true authentic self. Even if I am that way at work, it's kind of like the secret hobbies that I like to do that make me unwind, which is good.
You mentioned being in the recruiting staffing kind of industry. Was that always the game plan to be in that, or it kind of came out of nowhere for you?
And I think for you guys, they're called recruiters and also headhunters. So it's a very similar concept, right? But I remember my very first interview where, I prepared, I rang my mum, and this was for a recruitment role, and I bought a suit because that's what you had to do back then, buy a suit. And it's very hot in Queensland. You had to wear stockings, and I was, running across the road, and I was early, but my stocking got a ladder in it, and I was like, oh my gosh, like I was stressing out because of the interview, and I sat in the foyer, and I waited for this person to, interview me, and they were running behind, and it was about 20 minutes. And as a candidate, you think about, your questions that you're going to be asked, your answers, you're trying to get into that interview zone. And I thought to myself, if I do get this role, I really want to change the experience of the candidate, but also the experience of the client too. Like being a business owner, I can relate. So I always wanted to work in sales, but I think having that experience certainly changed my path. And now, how we kind of approach candidates or how we prepare them for interview and also our clients, that is driven a lot by, I guess, my experiences and what I've heard people go through too. Recruitment's awesome because we're generalists here, so we recruit all roles. So I can experience every single role having never worked in it. So and the clients that you meet, they're so great. They all have their own stories and their journeys, and it's just, I wouldn't do anything else. Love it.
With owning your own business, what was the challenging part getting that started?
Yeah, I'm not sure if you've heard of it. There's a really good book called The E-Myth, and basically it talks about the entrepreneurial journey, and I read it every year. Basically, there's a technician, he feels a bit disillusioned in his role, and he's like, you know what, I can do it better. He goes off to do it better, then finds out that it's very stressful running a business, and then you have to hire staff and things like that. I think the challenges of being a business owner, it's every day. It's you're the glue essentially, and you're the person that leads. If you're not energetic that day, or you're having, a bad week, it does affect, everyone else because they can see that. Challenges are always staff. I think certainly going through a transition of becoming a single mum was quite stressful too. Just finding the balance, right? And also COVID, like everyone forgets it or they want to forget it. But that was a very bizarre time because I'd be talking to people in America, India, England. Everyone was going through the same thing. Clients were stressing, economies were struggling, and, having to, I think the main challenge is really finding the purpose of why you wanted to be in business and start your own and sticking to that genuinely, because that's your driver. That is the thing that will make you go, I have to get up every day for an X amount of time and bring all my energy to it, regardless of what's going on externally, because you have people in your team that you support, and you have to, obviously help them with their lives too, because you're paying them, whilst fielding difficulties in your own personal life. So it's the craziest ride, I would have to say.
One of the big things with entrepreneurs is separating the differences between being a leader and being someone's friend. And a lot of entrepreneurs I've talked to, some are able to manage that, and some it's a challenge for them because of their personality styles. How have you been able to separate the two, or has it been a challenge where the employees feel more of a friendship than a leader?
Yeah. It is, I think, in a small business, because you have a smaller team, it is so easy to fall into that trap, and I certainly have. And I've been, you know, not reflecting, I probably reflected more last year, but really finding the balance between having a good relationship with people that work alongside you, but not but also understanding that it is a role. Because the ironic thing is, I'm in recruitment, so my role is to headhunt people out of businesses. So I know that it's not a loyalty thing, but I know everyone wants to progress in their career. And it's a good question, because I've spoken to a lot of business owners this week and last week with finding that balance. And we feel that people who are on our team, that they're doing exceptional things, that, they are our friends. You spend a lot of time in close quarters with people, and you confuse, I think, friendship for mutual respect. And it can turn quite toxic, right? So, and clients that I'm talking to at the moment that have had people with them for years feel disappointed, because they're like, well, I've done all these things. I took them on team events. I helped them buy their first car. I do all of this stuff, and then they leave, and then they go through a period of feeling, I think, a bit disillusioned. So the challenge is very real, I think, particularly for small business owners. And what I would say to that is, keeping things separate enough that there is that mutual respect, and finding your tribe in your business too. And the more structure you have around people that work with you, the easier it will become. And there's no lines that are blurred, but it's very difficult to find that balance.
From someone from my perspective, never being a leader and owning a company or being a manager or a boss, I definitely have seen that when it comes to the people I've worked with, where
Mm.
I'm a person that I want to feel that you are my boss. And
Yeah,
as much as the friendship is there, you kind of lose the respect in my way of, well, you're my friend, so I can get away with a lot, and
yeah,
I'm not going to be remanded or reprimanded for it
yeah,
because I have a different relationship than a boss employee relationship. And I think that kind of hurts a lot of or a lot of employers, because you leave and it's like, well, maybe there was a way that I could have stayed, and maybe that was a reason. I view them more as a friendship, and I'm not going to get to where I want because of that. And I think I look back at that and I'm like, there's quite a few examples I could really point out and to think the
yeah.
same way. And do you feel when you're talking to those clients of yours that you've kind of had that comparison where you don't want to say you've gone through that same situation because your clients are coming to you to help? But if you tell them that I may have gone through the similar situation, they trust you even more as someone
Oh,
that you're working with, because you have that relatability than lying about it when you didn't really go through something like that.
yeah. I think, and obviously being as professional as possible, but I certainly am always forthcoming in those, particularly because I do mentor as well for small businesses. I'm forthcoming in my own experiences, because I'm trying to, I guess, limit future pain for them. So I am always honest around challenges that I've gone through, because it is relatable, right? And also they feel like they can, I guess, unburden themselves too, and probably seek advice on how, like you said, if I was to go through it again, what would I have done differently? I think the other thing too, that small businesses, it's always the same thing. The owner starts the business, maybe their partner does the accounts or the admin or the brother-in-law or something. Family-run businesses, they have to be very clear in the guidelines, or I guess the organizational structure, because might be the same in America, but here it is it's a lot. Like there's a lot of family businesses here, which makes sense, right? Um, but it's difficult to fire your sister.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because I feel like, Christmas dinner would be quite uncomfortable. But in the other side too, if you are friends with your boss, on the flip side, it could also be that they have more expectation on you
Yeah.
as well because you are friends. So I think both on the extreme ends, they're quite unhealthy. So it's finding that balance in the middle to go, when we're at work. And this is kind of the chain of command. Like I don't really like talking about structures of leadership, but essentially that's what it is. And it's an open space, but you're also held to, your duties or your role, and so am I.
Running your company, did it ever take a toll on your personal life?
Yes. When I had my both my children, I worked right up until I had both of them, and then worked from having them, obviously in the hospital and doing payroll lighter duties. Um, and I have, and that's a very unpopular thing to say, but again, following transparency, my children are perfectly fine and healthy, and they have a lot of love, but it does affect your personal life quite a lot, and the things that you miss out on too, because you are running a business or having to react. I think, relationships can break down as well. Like if you're in a relationship or you started it with a partner, it's a lot of stress because you have family and then you have the work stresses too. Um, and being the owner, you can't really have sick days. Like I haven't had a holiday for quite some time. Again, I love what I do, but even sick days, if you don't have people in place to support your role, you're then working forever, which is detrimental to your mental health and physical health as well. So yes, having a business is like having another child, really.
Did it ever come to mind that you would maybe stop running the business in favor of your family and more spending time with your kids and things like that, making that tough decision between the two? Or was it a way to show your kids that you can have your own business, still have that personal life you want, and show empowerment to them?
Yeah, well, I think it's creating structure in your day. So, my children love them, but they do wake up quite early. So, when I do have, when they're with me, my work day doesn't start until I'm at work. So actually like going to a job like anyone else would. And at nighttime, it's, we're having dinner, the phone's away, being really present with them on the weekends, no work. Because really, if I can't do everything I need to do within the day, then there's probably something wrong with how I'm organizing my life.
Yep.
I think too, and not that I don't, and I'll step lightly here, but I think also because there is this movement of female leadership, and I have two sons, I think it creates an idea in their mind that, mummy goes to work, mummy travels for work. It's very normal, to have a male and a female that both work and contribute as well. So, and I'm proud of the fact that they will grow up knowing that, there is two parents that both work, and mum can craft her career and dad can do the same. And I would hope that that would translate or transfer for when they're old enough and they have partners and their partner might want to work, and having that example too. So it's very possible to have the balance, but it does take a while to find it, and the priority and the purpose is the main driver for everything else.
Being a single mother, what has been the best parts about being a mother to your kids? What is something that they bring out of you that you did not know you had in you?
Oh, just I think it's just everything, right? I think the times that even on the weekend, like we went to, there's a Lego exhibition in the Queensland Museum at the moment. So we went to that. My brother and I used to play Lego when we were younger, very interactive. We went on like the Wheel of Brisbane, which is like the London Eye, but obviously a lot smaller. I think they bring out the fun, and they when they ask to spend time with me, obviously I want them to get used to being bored or not bored, but I want them to entertain themselves and learn those skills. But they probably make me stop if I'm cooking or like just something and just really be present. I think that's the main thing, because that moment with them, I will never have. That day with them, I'll never have again. So they teach me to have fun in everything that I do. And very much, I guess, be honest, but also children have no filter as well. So teaching them things helps me relearn things as well, teaching them to ride a bike or, making cupcakes or something. So they definitely, I think being present and having fun is something that, they've taught me, because you can do that every day in whatever you do as well.
You talked about the bond that you have with them. Are you someone that is very open with them about your journey and experiences, or are they at the age where they're not ready to know what's been happening, but when they're
Yeah.
old enough and they're wanting to know, how did you start this company? How have you been on this journey? You're willing to be open with them because if they have a passion for it, you want them to learn from someone who has been through it.
Yeah, I think it was funny the other day. I asked them, I actually put it on my Instagram. I asked them what they thought I did every day. And they're like, you have lunch with your friends. And I was like, yeah, it's pretty much, what I do. But they're like, you find people for companies. So people complicate things, kids simplify, right? So I think when they're older, it's certainly particularly my eldest, he's quite wise and stoic. He's 8, but he's quite wise. I talk about certain things, like I might be like, oh, mummy recruits for that company, if we see the logo or whatever it may be, and I explain that to them, like, that I help people find work and help people. So it's a very easy thing to explain to them. I think what I do want to teach them is work etiquette and how to work as well, and how to progress. I think whether they start a business or chase a career in a company, those are the things that I'll be teaching them. And I think sales is the ability to connect with people, and that being the main point of the sales process, to be authentic and transparent. They're probably the things that I will teach them. They're great salespeople at the moment anyway. So
We've been on the journey from your professional side, but from the personal side, going through a divorce is something that some people can relate to. Going through that process, and you don't have to go detailed.
yeah.
What has been the challenging part through that journey? And how can someone that's listening to this be able to overcome that obstacle and continue on and not let that be in their mind all the time?
I think it's because there's this thing, I think it's called mother's guilt, right? And I know that fathers have it and everything else, but it is an inherently maternal thing that we have. And I think still now the social structures or the social norms is that, women are the ones that are the nurturers, which we are, and they're the ones that are the mums and the wives and provide that home. And then the father supports it. I think the biggest challenge is probably learning to trust who actually has your best interests at heart in your network or your friendship circle. And I think being really transparent about it, with your team, if you feel like it's appropriate, not to go into everything, and certainly not revealing things that, you know, cause damage to either parties, but just being like, hey, I'm going through a really hard time. Um, you know, I'm fine, but if you feel like I'm off, it might be a day that I'm having a bad day. I think people want to know that the leaders that they work with are people as well.
Mhm.
So I think challenge wise, it's certainly separating yourself from the stress, and really it's just walking through the front door and going, okay, we're in work mode, or coming home, we're in mum mode or parent mode. And knowing that if you are going through that at the moment, there's a reason why you've made that decision, or it's come to that impasse. And if you keep moving forward, right, it gets better each day, and it becomes more easier, I think. But the key really is to be kind to yourself, and also have a very good support network around you too, and knowing who those people are.
Has it given you a different outlook on future relationship, friendships, and the traits that you might have noticed from past, but
Mm.
don't kind of want to have that repeat in the future?
Yeah, I think everyone, it's probably not really, maybe it's during COVID. I think in COVID people either became very disconnected, or when everyone was released, they had this need to reconnect. And I think the general element is not being wary, but I guess being mindful of who you bring into your circle,
Yeah.
right? So I was very much someone that would just trust, like I would trust people and then would wait until they broke it. Whereas it's probably the opposite now. Like, you trust people when they show that they have reciprocal behavior, or not necessarily that they have your best interests at heart, but it's a good alignment to your values. So I think now when I'm, connecting with new people, it's not even a vetting process. It's not going, oh, we both like that show on Netflix, we should be friends. It's really going, what are the things that drive you? Like what are the things that you enjoy? Like how it, as you get older, and I think too, like being in recruitment, I talk to people, I've interviewed over 10,000 people. You have a intuition
Mhm.
around people, someone, doesn't have a strong social network, and that could be for many reasons, but if you just have a gauge of people that maybe not to like maybe not be their fault, but when they're not real or genuine or transparent, or their stories conflict, or in recruitment, for example, they change jobs every couple of years because it was their manager's fault. There was no element of accountability. You can apply that as well to relationships or friendships too. Um, but yeah, I think I read this thing the other day because I love Robert Greene. He's a modern day philosopher, but he was saying there would have been a point at the beginning of a friendship or a relationship that ended in a toxic way, where there was, we call them red flags now, but there was a few moments where it didn't sit well with you, but you still allowed it to continue, and then you become used to it, right? So I think it's being mindful of those moments and trying to step out of your own bias, or the way you've been brought up, to go, how do I actually feel about this interaction?
I love how you mentioned that because I went through a friendship, and a lot of people that are listening to this are going to know the exact person I'm referencing. I was so biased in my friendship with them that I kind of maybe clouded my judgment and said, this person couldn't do wrong because
Yeah.
of the friendship I had. And since I haven't been friends with that person for a few years now, I kind of look back at the things that happened and I'm like, why didn't I see that red flag earlier? Why didn't
Yeah.
I notice that maybe I shouldn't have been as close to that person because of the things or how they acted? And it now makes me think differently when it comes to friendship and who I bring into my network and circle because I
Mm.
want the people that really value my friendship with them like they value me to them.
Mm.
And it was just amazing that you said that because I've been thinking about that for so long that that person pretty much took a challenge to my other friendships. And now, since that person's out of my life, the other friendships have gotten even closer because of
Yeah. And I think, I'm very big on, I guess, gratitude, but also trying to be as empathetic as possible. Everyone has a journey, I think. And at that point, when you created that friendship, you were, in a particular stage in your
that.
life, you probably resonated with certain things. That's why now you're like, oh my gosh, like, what was I doing? But it's really also going, you know, everything that we have done in our lives, the way that we think, our bias led us to this point where you and I are talking right now, right? There's something that, was in your journey that led you to the podcast that, I reached out to you or you reached out to me, and everyone has their own things, and people, they have so many stories to tell, right? And you don't know what someone's going through
Mhm.
and why they are the way that they are. and or why they lie or why they act in a certain way. So for me, I at the end of, friendships or things like that, it's an element of self-reflection to go, not what could I have done, or perhaps, because you can't change the past. I don't believe in living in the past, but moving forward, what will I do each day, or what would I do in my new kind of interactions? And it's also being accountable for, I guess, your own behavior too, because it's easy to go, okay, they did those horrible things, and I can imagine it doesn't sound like it was the best experience for you. But it's by us not setting I guess, a boundary, did we allow that to kind of come through, kind of sneak through the door, and we didn't notice it too? Because it's like children. If you let them do whatever they want, then that they go, oh, that's okay, I can do that now. Adults is very similar. Um, but yeah, no, I'm sorry to hear about that, because it is hard to go through something like that, and then the aftermath of it too. They go to your friends, talk about things, and it's just it's not great.
During this time, what has been your future goals? Do you see yourself kind of what we talked about, finding different paths to continue with growing what you're doing in addition to running your own business? Do you have future goals that are kind of in the works, or some
Yeah,
surprises that maybe people will find out later and you're like, they will never know I'm working on this?
and I'm going to reveal them now. No,
Yeah.
no, I think for me it's I'm actually going through a process at the moment of writing a book, which is exciting, around recruitment, but more from the candidate side. So really how to help people find the role that they want. And it's not like resume writing or anything like that. It's how do you stand out? How do you really put your best foot forward? And what are the things that you can understand from a client or a recruiter's side that will help you get the role? I'm really enjoying like doing podcasts as projects that I've got coming up with a couple of clients that are going to be really good. Can't talk about those because they're NDA signed, but they are very exciting. And I think for me, my whole purpose is to enter into any scenario with someone and learn something from them, but also hopefully impart some knowledge or something from myself that can help them. I think for me, it's probably moving more into helping small business owners or business owners to understand how to be professional in the workplace, or not to have those blurry lines, or how to hire properly, and you know acknowledging the superstars in your team. Because what we do is we go, they're awesome, I'll just leave Alex in the corner, I don't want to disturb him because he's doing really well. How do we appreciate those people, and how do we make them future leaders? If we think they're awesome, let's create, I don't know, give them training opportunities to teach other people in the business. So I have a bit of a loose structure. It will always kind of revolve around, I guess, recruitment and sales. But I think it can be done really well, like hiring, applying for jobs. It can be done so that you can find a good role that is just not something that supports your family, but also supports you mentally and professionally. And for clients that are in businesses or own businesses, it's going, hey, you've taken the leap to start a business. These are the things that you can do to create a really great team, because no matter what you sell, people are the one, they're your product always. So a couple of few things that are coming up. It's going to be an exciting couple of years, I think. So yeah.
The final question I'll ask you, for someone that's listening to this interview based on your journey and experience, what tips or advice would you give them to overcome obstacles, accomplish their goals, and rise to the challenge?
Create a very good network of people that will not just cheerlead, but also keep you accountable, and be really honest with you, but also don't hold stock in everything that they say. Like, have the kind of like the close circle, and then have the next circle out, and then professionals in your industry. I always say to people, you have to kind of step over yourself. You know, if we talk about imposter, you know, imposter syndrome, I remember years ago when I started doing like, you know, panel events or speaking and things like that. And I had to step over my own insecurities because it's not about me. It's about being a vessel for information to people that are listening. So it's it's I think anything that you're afraid of is good because it means that there's growth. Growth is about to happen. So it's kind of like leaning into it and changing your perspective to go, okay, I'm presented with a problem. What is the solution? And it's always the persistence. Everyone has the ability to do really great things, but there is just something that stops them, whether it's fear, whether it's, you know, opinions from partners or family or friends, or whether it's just that deep insecurity. But if you have like this beautiful dream or idea, it's come from somewhere. So it's nurturing it, but being really honest with yourself around, you know, needing help as well, or getting advice, or keeping yourself accountable. So it's a lot there, but there's a few things in there.
Tanya, I want to thank you so much for coming on the show and talking about your rise to the challenge. You're inspiring so many people, and we are excited to see what the future looks like for you.
Thanks, Alex. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Tune in next time to hear my next guest talk about their rise to the challenge. Remember to follow, subscribe on all major audio platforms. Make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel to see episode